Now, we just got done with UFC 303 and a lot of crazy things happened in the main card, which is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Let's go ahead and start talking about the first fight of the night, which was Ian Machado Garry versus Michael Venom Page. So Ian Machado Garry pretty much impressed me tonight, not in terms of anything that has to do really with skill as a fighter, but his decision making on attacking his opponent's weakness, right? Because Michael Venom Page, as we know, not the greatest grappler, right? Even against Kevin Holland was able to control him for a couple of situations and a couple of positions. But Ian Machado Garry pretty much, I think, was coming into this fight knowing that he wasn't going to outstrike someone as dangerous as Michael Venom Page, because he just has a super unorthodox style that has a high percentage of landing strikes and pretty powerful strikes. Especially in round 2, we saw that Michael Venom Page was putting the work on Ian Machado Garry, and he was landing some pretty clean shots. I don't think that Ian Garry landed not one clean punch against Michael Venom Page the entire fight. But what Ian Machado Garry did, though, is have those 2 out of 5 takedowns, and he had those 2 submission attempts that we saw Michael Venom Page be in a whole lot of damn trouble. And in my opinion, I feel like that's what won him the fight. I don't think that necessarily he won the fight because he was the better striker. If you go back and watch the film, Ian Machado Garry was kind of trying to be like a counter fighter, but Michael Venom Page is just too damn quick, like lightning fast attacks, right? That Ian Machado Garry just wasn't prepared to react to. And like I said, I feel like in terms of his decision making, say what you want to say about the guy, maybe he does have flaws, as like his personal character, right? Say what you want to say about him, but in terms of his IQ, being a mixed martial artist, it's pretty decent, right? So I gotta give credit where credit is due. Ian Machado Garry, GG's, you did your thing, you won the fight the way he needed to, and it is what it is. Let's move forward. So the second fight of the night was Bueno Silva versus Macy's Chasson, and this was a pretty interesting fight. The fight ended in round number 2, pretty much halfway through, when Macy was on top control against Bueno Silva and landed a powerful, clean slicing elbow towards Bueno Silva's forehead, which gave her a crazy gash. Now, I can't show you the images because it'll get my channel, restricted or whatever. But if you guys go on x.com, Instagram, you guys could pretty much get a good glimpse on how bad the injury was towards Bueno Silva's forehead. I feel like we've seen worse injuries, in male fights, right? And they let them keep going. But it is what it is. I feel like they're probably gonna get a rematch. I don't know. But yeah, interesting situation. All right, and now we move on to Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze, which was a pretty bad fight for Anthony Smith, man. I'm gonna just be honest. It was a bad fight for him. Roman Dolidze, being the middleweight, is now ranked in the top 10 in the light heavyweight division. Crazy. And he looked like he was undersized, right? If you guys put an image of Anthony Smith standing right next to Roman Dolidze, like, you could just tell that Roman Dolidze is the smaller guy, like Anthony Smith, obviously with the bigger bag, the bigger legs, he just looks like a light heavyweight. And Roman Dolidze, for his size, even though they're similar height, he just doesn't have that same like beefiness as a natural light heavyweight. And it's crazy that a middleweight was able to outwork Anthony Smith being the light heavyweight. Crazy. Anyways, Anthony Smith pretty much ends the fight getting fatigued. I think that he was experiencing fatigue in the second round. In my opinion, I feel like Anthony Smith thought that he was going to end the fight pretty early, and I think that he expended himself a little bit too much in the first round, and Roman Dolidze was just able to keep up with him. I feel like Anthony Smith thought that he was going to get an easy finish because Roman Dolidze was a middleweight, right? You could even hear Anthony Smith tell, Hunter and Dana White after the fight was over, they're like, hey man, can you guys give me a little bit more time next time? And that's just, it was just bad. It was an overall bad performance by Anthony Smith. He gets tired out by the second round. It was bad. Roman Dolidze now is ranked number 10. He said he wants to fight some middleweights. He said he wants to fight in the light heavyweight division as well. He called out Khamzat Chimaev, even though I don't think he'll get that fight. Maybe, Khamzat Chimaev entertains that possibility whenever he's trying to make his comeback back into the UFC. crazy things are going on right now, ladies and gentlemen. This was a big surprise for me, if I'm just being honest. So let's talk about this co-main event situation that went down at UFC 303, which was Diego Lopez, who was supposed to face Brian Ortega, right? And of course, we know that, you know, Brian Ortega was pretty much replaced by Dan Ige. More on that later. We know that Brian Ortega apparently got sick and he was forced to pull out. Before that, apparently he wasn't able to make featherweight, so they bump up the fight to 155. Then apparently 5 hours before that, he lets the UFC know that, hey, I'm not gonna be able to fight, I'm really sick. They call up Dan Ige, and Dan Ige steps up and he fights Diego Lopez. But let me just say this: Brian Ortega was acting really freaking weird during the press conference. I can't be the only one who noticed it, that he had a very strange energy towards him. He had a very different tone, right, that we usually don't see from Brian Ortega. He was being very dismissive and very short to answering the questions from the reporters, and I felt like something was up, right? I was gonna go ahead and make a video about the entire situation, but until we saw what was gonna go down between Diego Lopez and Brian Ortega, I held off on the video. But you could literally tell that, you know, Brian Ortega was acting super freaking weird during the press conference. But Dan Ige and Diego Lopez, who in my opinion right now is a pretty much a fan favorite, they gave us a pretty good fight. I feel like Diego Lopez won the first 2 rounds, and I feel like Dan Ige had some pretty good moments in the 3rd round. There's some rumors going on already that they're both going to feature in the Sphere card that's supposed to go down in September. But yeah, great performance from 2 guys that pretty much saved UFC 303, because as we know, this was a last minute thing for Diego Lopez, and especially for Dan Ige, who only knew 5 hours beforehand that he was going to face Diego Lopez. All the respect to both of those guys. So we have to talk about Alex Pereira versus Jiri Procházka in the main event, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, we know by the end of the first round, Alex Pereira caught Jiri Procházka with a very powerful punch that sat him down. I thought that that fight was over by then. You know, Jiri Procházka, he got up, he was wobbly, his equilibrium was all over the place. As soon as the 2nd round starts, you can see that he's not as, you know, he's not all there, you know. And Alex Pereira literally just closes the distance on him, you know, and he lands a switch kick with no setup. That was a knockout. That's crazy. We don't really see that, you know, too much in combat sports, right? We don't see switch kick knockouts, and we don't see switch kicks land that clean with no setup. Which is absolutely crazy. Anyways, Jiri Procházka literally said after the fight that he needs to evolve as a fighter, or he's gonna retire. You know, and I think that Jiri Procházka definitely, you know, should have followed with a specific game plan. You know, if I was Jiri Procházka, I would try to look for positions like he was looking for in the first fight, where he was just pressuring Alex Pereira to the fence, looking for a clinch, land a takedown, get the takedown, flatten Alex Pereira's back, and try to get some easy points and some easy time on Alex Pereira. I know that's easier said than done, especially against a guy like Alex Pereira. But yeah, it was tough to see Jiri Procházka lose the way that he did, because like I said, it's not often that we see too many switch kicks land by KO in a combat sports, especially without a setup, right? And I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, it was a good fight all the way through. You know, I think that Alex Pereira is probably in conversations for being in the top 10 best to ever do it in the UFC. He's at the verge to it. Maybe 1-2 more fights. Look, if this could possibly happen for Alex Pereira, I could definitely see it. He fights Ankalaev, he defends his title, he moves up to heavyweight, he probably beats Tom Aspinall or John Jones, whoever's available at the time, and I think that Alex Pereira might very well be in the top 10, right? And it's crazy what, you know, Alex Pereira has been able to accomplish within a very short career in the UFC. But yeah, very good performance by Alex Pereira at UFC 303. Definitely, you know, lived up to the expectations. Great replacement fight for the Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler fight that was supposed to go down in the main event. But yeah, those are my thoughts for UFC 303. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. As always, it's a pleasure. Peace out and have a good one.